there's always room for myself included. And so that's my passion. That's why I'm here. I think mental health is the start of who we are and sometimes can be the end of who we are. And so I want to make sure that we are always knowledgeable about how to best take care of ourselves. And if we don't know how to do it ourselves, to know the resources and the opportunities that are out there to help us do that. So that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Dallas. We really appreciate it. And then we've also got Brianne Clark with us. Hi, Brianne.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm the Child and Youth Program Specialist at Wise Women Gathering Place here in Green Bay. I live in Green Bay, just outside of the Oneida Reservation, and as well as the Child and Youth Program Specialist, I'm the volunteer coordinator at Wise Women as well. And I think I think Amber summed it up pretty well about why it's important to make sure we continue our self-care during these really difficult times, especially with a lot of unrest going on. But yeah, thank you for allowing me to introduce myself.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Wise Women Gathering Place for people who are joining us who maybe don't know?
Sure. So Wise Woman is a small nonprofit here in Green Bay, founded over 20 years ago by two midwives, one from Wisconsin and then one from Canada. So we work with all victims of crime, from youth to adults. We run a lot of different prevention groups for middle and high school youth, as well as young adults, and then groups for older women and men as well, providing advocacy to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, helping with housing in the area, doing a lot of different projects, working in the community, just doing a lot of different outreach, a lot of different programs focusing on prevention, intervention, just a little bit of everything at Wise Women.
I'm really founded on this foundation of principles within our Indigenous cultures, which is super cool.
Yeah.
So thank you both so much for being here with us today as we have this conversation about self-care and finding joy. And so many people, and I know that a lot of people who are on this Zoom today have really come into anti-racism work this last year. And I've heard from people about really struggling with doing this work. And it's hard and it's emotionally taxing to do this kind of work, and how to be able to still enjoy things when you know that the world can be a really terrible place. So what are some of your thoughts about why is self-care so important, and why is it important that we are able to really take care of ourselves while we're doing this?
I think that self-care is important because it allows us to refill ourselves. And I always think of the analogy of just like a pitcher. And when you have water in your pitcher, you can pour that out and you can serve other people. But if there's no water, if you're not being filled up, then you have nothing to give to other people. And so you really do a disservice to not only yourself, but to the people that you were fighting for, the people that you are grinding for, the people that you are out here trying to be on the front line for, because you haven't done what you need to do to take care of yourself. So at the root of everything, it literally, you have to be in a good space to be able to do the kind of work that's needed to really see change and evoke change. And to your point of when you say, you know, it's really taxing, and you kind of get some guilt sometimes. I know that in this type of work, and not only just in this type of work, but when you're considered to be a high achiever or really good at what you do in any field, you can feel guilty when you start to have fun in other places. I call it like fun guilt, because you're always thinking I could be doing this, or I should be doing that, or I have this to do on my to-do list and all of these things. Or especially in the realm of social justice, like I'm having fun, I'm enjoying the holidays, but you know, Breonna Taylor doesn't get to enjoy the holidays, or George Floyd doesn't get to enjoy the holidays. And I think that that sentiment is real, and you have to sit with those emotions. And I think that part, that empathy, helps us to be better people in general. Like, it's true, but they're not mutually exclusive. Like, you can enjoy the holidays, and it is sad that those people aren't here to do the same thing.
I would have to agree. I feel like a lot of people feel guilt when they are taking self-care for themselves, because the work is taxing. And when I'm looking over my notes, and like, Dr. Gibson really summed up everything I was going to say really well. So I'm like, what am I going to say? But yeah, I agree a lot with the guilt, and sometimes it's hard to get away from that guilt. But I realize that when I'm not showing up to the places like fully rested and fully being well, I'm doing a disservice to the youth that I'm working with, to the families that I'm working with. So I know that I need to take care of myself to better show up for the people I'm working for and working with. So that's why it's important for me to do self-care when doing hard work.
It's definitely something that I've noticed, is that, I do my best work when I'm able to really show up and be fully present for the people that I'm working with. In the work that I do with YW, there's a lot of that sort of one-on-one interaction that I have with people, that I do really need to be very present for that. And if there's a whole lot else going on, it can be really hard to do that and show up 100% and really give people the kinds of service that they deserve in this work. But also, right, like, it's really hard to be able to say, like, I can only do 5 of these meetings a day. I have 10 people that want a meeting, and I can only do 5. I can only show up and be really present in 5 of them. So what are some strategies that you have? You both talked about guilt around this. What are some strategies to really help people to give themselves some permission to be able to take time and to have fun and to still experience joy, even though, Breonna Taylor doesn't get to do that, and her family is probably really struggling to do that. How do we do that? How do we give ourselves that permission?
So some of the things that I had jot down is realizing that we're only human, and that we need to take this time for ourselves. We only have 24 hours in this day. And like I said, if we don't take the time, we're going to get burnt out and we're not going to be our best selves. So I try to remind myself of that, is like, I can't do it at 45%. I need to be 100%. And then sometimes when I feel myself getting to capacity where I'm going to be burnt out soon, I try to remind myself of the time that I have been burnt out, and what can I do right now to boost my percentage up to 75 or 100, and realizing well, I can't say I hope I feel better next week, because hope isn't a strategy. I need to put in a plan in place, and I need to give myself that permission, even though it's hard. And I know that I sometimes might feel a little guilty, but I need to take the time to re-energize.
Yeah, I think those things are really important. I think that just the start of it is just recognizing when you're in need of a break or in need of just a moment. Because sometimes I think we misconceptualize the thought of self-care being I just need to step away completely from something. And sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. So you can be in the midst of a fight or a project or whatever it is, and you may just need an hour, you may need 2 hours, and that is helpful for you to refocus and get back on track. For me, it's really important that I practice mindfulness. And meditation is really helpful with that. And that helps me also to be cognizant of my emotions, that guilt, which is a secondary emotion, but an emotion nonetheless. It happens, or anxiety or frustration, whatever it is that I'm feeling because of the workload that I have and I have to maintain. Being cognizant of that is how I best if I know what's happening, I can manage it. And so mindfulness meditation, there are, tons of things on YouTube for just 5-minute meditations. And you don't even have to feel overwhelmed to do that. That actually helps prevent me from getting to that burnout point if I practice those things in moderation on a regular basis. And then also it's helpful for me to honor those people who may not be here to enjoy what I'm enjoying, in the same way that if someone in your family passed away, you honor them like on their birthday, or you honor them, you make mention of them on holidays and things of that nature. I've seen people get married and have like pictures of their grandparents or their parents who aren't no longer here. I think the same thing can be true for, just when we look at the social justice fight and the people who are no longer here, who we continue to fight for. We honor them by enjoying our families. We honor them by making the best of every day that we do have here on this earth. And we honor them with the fight. We honor them in those moments where, we feel like we're on an off moment and we're not working, but an opportunity presents itself to correct someone or to show them like, hey, this isn't right, or to stand up for someone who's being done wrong. That's how you honor those people. And when you honor them, that guilt starts to subside, because you shouldn't feel guilty because you didn't do it. But if you do your part, you're not adding to what's already been done, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I think just honoring them, making sure that you're taking time for yourself, being mindful of your own emotions, and just using useful tactics day to day to help you kind of manage stress levels.
One of the very hard lessons that I've had to learn recently is this idea, Brianne, you talked about 100%. I always think about it in a little bit different of a way of being able to really recognize, like, what is 100% that I can do today? And how can I feel really great that I did 100% and not have to do 110 or 120 or just keep going? Because those extra percents they're not helpful and they're not productive. And being able to really like have some boundaries around, like, I did the best that I could do today, and I feel really confident and really great that I did the best that I can do today. And that's all I can do, and that's okay. I think that that's something that a lot of us have really struggled with this year. The switch to having so many of us be virtual and taking on lots of other kinds of responsibilities that we may have as part of being virtual, with with kiddos not being in school, and so many things getting really moved over into different ways. I think that that's a really like important lesson to be able to learn and to be able to recognize, like, where am I at 100% and where can I feel really great that I did my best today, and then let the rest of it go. So what are some strategies for sort of being able to put things away? So we gave ourselves some permission. We can have some time. We can do this. What are some strategies that you share with people about being able to kind of switch in your brain a little bit to be able to say, like, okay, we need to put that away for a little while and focus somewhere else?
I think for me, at least, I was a kid, I grew up with ADHD. And so I really had to learn how to manage as a kid. And that just intensified throughout grad school, undergrad, all those things. But I have to make a schedule. Like, I have to. And just like you schedule anything else, like if you had a dentist appointment, you would put that in your schedule. If you have to be at work from 9 to 5, you put that in your schedule. Scheduling in those times for yourself, whether it be, hey, at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., that's the time I work out. Or 7 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., that's the time I meditate. And just sticking to that schedule, and it becomes a ritual almost. It just becomes second nature at that point. And that's something that's just helpful for me to be able to not look over and be able to cross that off my to-do list. So if you're type A and you like to cross things off your to-do list, then that might be something that you would look into doing, just so you can make sure that you hold yourself accountable with that.
I like how you brought up the list. Sometimes when I'm making my to-do list, I'll add like 5 minutes of like massaging my scalp just so I can, I don't know, check it off. But it's also those 5 minutes that I get to give attention to myself. And another way that I think, like when I'm trying to transition from thinking about something to thinking about something else and maybe focus on myself, is journaling, like just getting all of the things that are flowing in my mind on paper. And that kind of helps me transition from one, like thinking about one thing to thinking about the next thing. I just find journaling really beneficial. I know it's not for everyone, but journaling and just kind of putting whatever I'm thinking about in a jar and putting it away, and it's all written down. So when I need to come back and process it more and come up with a plan, that is something that I do to help me transition at least.
That's really good. I like that. And I also have another point to that, because I think that if you can, and you have access to it, I think that therapy is really important. Even if you don't feel like you're in a quote unquote bad place, I think that therapy is important for maintenance as well. And so I think that could be helpful, but also just a quick tool that you have access to if you have a phone. There's this thing called a Pomodoro Timer, and it literally like it saves my life. And to Brianne's point of like taking 5 minutes to just like massage your scalp or just take a breather. You literally, you can set a timer to like work for 40 minutes and then take a 10-minute break. Work for 30 minutes, then take a 5-minute break, however you want to do the cycles, but it just literally keeps you from sitting there just doing, straight work for hours and hours. Cause I know we've all been engulfed in our work to the point where we look up and, we haven't eaten, we haven't gone to the restroom, we haven't, we haven't gotten fresh air that day. And those things can be really detrimental to our mental health. And so that can just keep you in the loop of like, oh, okay, I need to take a breather and then I can come back to this. And it makes your output more, it makes it better. Like if you can take that break and take that mental break and come back to it, you have some clarity that helps you with whatever you were doing. So.
Amber, I love that you bring up fresh air. That's something that's been so important for me. In being able to sort of physically compartmentalize things. So even when I'm doing, when I'm volunteering or I'm working on, other kinds of projects that aren't necessarily work projects. And I know that we have a lot of people out there that are listening in and watching this webinar that their jobs are not social justice, but they're doing this and engaging in this in some way. But being able to find some space to be able to, like, when I sit at this desk, this is what I'm doing. And then when I leave this desk, I leave this desk. And sometimes that means, going outside and taking a 5-minute walk. I get it, Green Bay, it can be real tough in Wisconsin. But being able to take, just a walk around the house so that you get just a little bit of sunshine can be really helpful. Being able to sort of put the hard stuff into a physical space can be really helpful then to be able to walk away from it sometimes too. I've seen so many of us in 2020 really bring all of the hard stuff into all of our spaces. So I've got people, I'm sure there are people out there right now, I'm going to call you out if this is you, who are watching this webinar from their couch, and how to be able to like physically compartmentalize things so that, when I'm in my bedroom, that's a place where I am relaxed and I'm chill and I can have my time. And I don't need to think about it. And my brain is trained to know that, like, when I go to my bedroom, we're not thinking about this anymore, and we need to put it away. So I think that there's some of those, like, and they feel sort of silly of like, like at the end of the day, like I turn off my terrible fluorescent lighting, and that's a really like good signal to my brain of like, it's time to leave it alone until the next day. So there's some really good tips in there. So I appreciate that. So Brian, you brought up a 5-minute scalp massage. Amber, you brought up a 5-minute YouTube video. What are some of your favorite strategies for, you know, that kind of 5-minute break in the middle of your day?
I really enjoy just like trying to clear my head. I'm a thinker, and I'm always like, there's always something going through my brain. And so I have to intentionally like shut that down to give my brain a break. And so those deep breathing exercises are really helpful for me, because that's what I'm concentrating on. It's really hard to concentrate on the world and what's going on around you if you're trying to focus on like regulating your breath. And so that's been helpful. Just being mindful. That mindfulness is a part of what we consider in the clinical field dialectical behavior therapy. And that's a long drawn out process that doesn't just include mindfulness, but mindfulness is a part of it. And it can be really helpful with trauma. It can be helpful with depression. It can be really helpful with anxiety. Just all of those things that tend to kind of weigh us down sometimes. It can be helpful with those things, especially when it becomes second nature. You feel silly, like you were saying, like you feel silly at first. Like it's really weird to sit, you know, crisscross applesauce in the middle of your floor after you just got off a Zoom meeting with like execs, and you know you're talking about how you're gonna, you know, bring down the patriarchy and all these things. Now you're sitting like crisscross applesauce in your floor, but I guarantee you feel less silly over time. And it just really becomes second nature, and it is a breather. Like I look forward to that. Also, as much as, and I know that we say it all the time, but eating well and drinking lots of water and exercising, just even, and I'm not talking like you don't have to do CrossFit or like you don't have to have a Peloton or any of those things, but even just that walking back and forth in your house. Or I'm lucky, I'm in Texas, so our you know, we're at 37 degrees today with some sun, so it's not too bad. You know, I know you guys are probably way below that, but just moving your body gets those endorphins going, and it's really helpful to your body chemistry. And you'll tell, like I literally said this to my friend the other day. I said, you know, after Thanksgiving, I went on a small trip, a road trip right before Thanksgiving, and saw some family, and have been eating horribly since then. And I can feel it. Like I don't have as much energy, and that puts a lot of strain on what I need to do at work, because I'm not as productive, which means I feel like I have to overwork to compensate. And all of that could be changed if I just, you know, ate some more green vegetables. So this is my accountability. I'm holding myself accountable today that's the goal, because I'm like, woo, I'm tired. But yeah, you just got to take care of your physical body, and the mental does follow. It really does.
Some of the, I think, 5-minute ways that I can do some self-care throughout the day. There's usually always someone in my space that I can talk to and check in with, whether it be my parents or my partner. And for me, that's really important. Just taking 5 minutes for a hug, or just a pep talk, or a check-in with them. How are you doing? What are you doing today? And I don't know, the connection with my family and those close to me really rejuvenates me. But I know that's not the case for everyone. Sometimes people live alone. So maybe a quick FaceTime or check-in that way. Even though I know you probably don't want to be looking at a screen for another 5 minutes, but just getting connection with the people that we love. I also always have like a ring of positive affirmation cards. And I used to always feel silly, like I'm doing a beautiful job handling hard things. And it felt silly at first, but I think just constantly telling myself these positive things that I'm doing good work and that I can take care of myself, and that it's okay to take care of myself and take time for myself. That has been really positive, and it's always a like mood booster for me, at least. And the getting out in nature and getting fresh air, and it is hard right now in Green Bay. It's a little chilly. I was like 37 degrees sounds great. I might put a dress on, but getting outside and like putting my feet in the grass. We have a pretty nice backyard, and just spending time out there. My mom would usually be outside during the day, so going and sitting on the deck with her, so getting fresh air and talking to my mom at the same time there's two of me now. Sorry. But yeah, fresh air, connection, and positive affirmations are some of like my go-to when I need self-care for 5 minutes.
Brian, I love that you have that affirmation kind of like just note cards. I think that's beautiful because I think that just like we begin to believe things about ourselves that may not be true, if someone says it enough, you believe it. The brain works the same way for the opposite. So if someone tells you you're great enough, you will believe it. You know, we see that even in pop culture. Like there are people who are musicians and things like that. We're like, I don't really like that, but someone has told them they're great enough and they believed it and they took it and they flew. And so whether we believe it or not, they believe it. And that's all that matters, really.
Is that Danielle that's joined us?
Yeah, it is.
Hi, sorry. I had a little bit of emergency, but I'm here now. So.
No worries at all. Do you want to take just a minute to introduce yourself and tell us why you wanted to join in on this conversation today?
Sure. So my name is Danielle Carl. I work with Wise Women Gathering Place in Green Bay, but I'm also an activist in heart. And so I have a lot of causes that I'm passionate about and doing activism work in the racial justice areas. So
cool.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much
for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So I love that we're talking about this sort of maintenance piece of self-care. I think that self-care has been so like distorted in the last couple of years, at least in the like circles that I'm in, that it's, you know, like a bottle of wine in the bathtub once a month when you're ready to cry and do nothing else. So I love this conversation about being able to you know, kind of have this maintenance piece of things where we're taking care of ourselves every day, so that we maybe don't get to that place and can make some better choices along the way before we get to a place where we have to take a week off at a spa somewhere to kind of get our feet back underneath of us. So do you have a favorite like big splurge to share with others when you really get there and you really need a boost?
I would say mine is that big trip you were talking about. Traveling has always been a big thing in my family, and it's been passed down from my grandma to my mom to me. So it is going on the big trip and taking time at the spa while I'm on that trip. So that's for me at least.
I would have to second that. I developed a love for travel when I was in graduate school, and which is kind of an oxymoron because I was broke, but we found a way. And so I really, really enjoy not only just getting away from my day to day, but immersing myself in other cultures, like just to learn, to grow. I'm always fascinated. And every time I feel like my worldview is strengthened, and traveling helps me to challenge my own beliefs. Why do I believe what I believe? And really, dig down, do I believe what I believe because I really believe them to be true, or because that's just my norm and I've never seen anything else? But all of that to say, because of COVID, that maintenance part is even more important because I don't have that opportunity to, really travel like I want to. It's pretty much, sticking around these parts and not being able to immerse myself in cultures. No passport stamps this year, so.
I was just gonna say, like growing up, I mean, I guess we weren't really taught self-care. So it's a struggle as an adult for sure to have that balance, that healthy balance. And you know, also grew up in poverty, so big splurges weren't really a thing. Um, you know, because we're kind of trying to either you come from a culture of spend it if you have it because you never know when you're going to get it again, or it is hold on to what you have and to be very tight with your money. So I had a grandparent for each one of those. So it was interesting growing up to see the different spending styles. And so I feel a lot of guilt when I splurge like that. But traveling is also something that my husband and I have tried to do since we got together when we started dating. And I'm going to mirror what Amber said. Being an Indigenous person and having a very specific worldview about how I was raised in my tribal community, it doesn't look like that in all tribal communities. So the nerd in me is like so excited when I get to go somewhere. And the first thing that comes to mind is, where are the Indigenous people? And how can I get to them? And what can I learn about them while I'm here? And how can I take this back with my youth and just share these different worldviews? Because the struggles are different from tribal community to tribal community, but also the gifts and the contributions that they bring to those areas is so important to learn about. So to me, that is where it's at. You know, I could go to Disney, I can go to Universal, go to Florida, but you know, I really want to be down in knowing where other Indigenous folks are and just seeing their struggles and their strengths and their successes. So to me, that's my heart, like the chicken soup for my soul type of thing. It just really is like the heart healing level for me. And the other thing too is I'm from 3 tribes, so I got to start knowing my grandpa's tribe. They're from Mississippi, and so I got to spend a lot of time down there, just really immersing myself in the culture down there. And I'm struggling because I can't go, you know, right now. And it's about time. Like I'm overdue for a really good home trip to be around my ancestors and my extended family on that side. And to me, that was a shift, a huge shift, because I really just connected on a different type of level with that tribal community versus the one that I was raised in. So it's still very new and passionate, and I'm just super excited anytime I can go down there. So really now is a difficult time because I'm not able to be around them. So thank you.
So that's a really great segue into our next question about cultural assets around self-care. Are there pieces of your culture that really have helped you to do this well? You know, were you taught about self-care as part of your cultural heritage? Is this something that was modeled to you while you were growing up? What are those kinds of pieces that your culture really brings to this puzzle?
Um, I I grew up in Dallas, and neither of my parents, you know, went to college. They had me pretty young. They didn't stay together, and so it was more. I had relationships with both of my parents, but what I saw from them was we have to provide. And so we don't have the luxury of being able to take time away, or whether it be for a week, a day, or an hour, it was always something needed to be done, whether I had to go to work or I have to take care of the kids or, you know, whatever it is. I lived with my mom. I didn't see my mom take any breaks really. And now as an adult, when I think back, I'm like, I don't know how she did it. Like, I really don't. Like, it seems impossible. I don't know how she did it and made it out with, you know, um, her brain fully functioning still. Like, it literally, if I were to do that now, it would be a recipe for a meltdown, honestly. And so but there was pride taken in that. And I think that's where my culture came from, or what my culture stood on, especially, during the 90s, was that you work hard and that's what you're supposed to do. And if you do that, you're a good woman or you're a good man. And that is what that means. If you don't do that, then that means you don't take care of your kids. You don't, you're weak. You don't have room to do all of those things. So with that being said, like a lot of my identity growing up was found in accolades. Like it was, I was a good student, I was a good athlete, I was good in theater. Like those were the things that made my parents proud because they worked hard, and to see that I was working hard, that made them proud. So I found my accolades in that. And I didn't really take a lot of time off. I didn't, like, it was just go mode. And it wasn't until grad school when I went to, for the first time, I went to a historically Black college for grad school. And it was the first time I was immersed so deeply into my own culture, if that makes sense. Like, and to see that there were different types of Black people, like, blew my mind. I grew up, I only spent time, I went from Dallas to Nacogdoches for undergrad, and you guys probably have no idea where Nacogdoches is. It's the oldest town in Texas. And it is really country. And so I only knew that type of Black person. I didn't know there was not a lot of variety. And then to go to Howard University in DC and just see so many different types of Black people, some who had similar backgrounds as me, some who had completely opposite backgrounds as me. But to see them really come together and us be taught that it's important for us to manage ourselves so that we can thrive in our communities and thrive in the world, was where I was first taught, like, hey, you got to take some time. Like, you don't always, everyone here got here because they're good at school. That's not that, while that is an asset that you have, that's not who you are. And that was the first time that I really had to, like, that was a blow to the chest, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm smart. That's what I'm supposed to do. And they're like, yeah, great. That's a great asset. But what else? What else are you? And that's when I really had to do that soul searching. And that's when I learned, like, from professors and from my peers, of what that looks like for to really take time for yourself. And I will say, like, coming back home, it was hard because I'm coming back to Dallas, where my support system in Dallas, their mindset is still work, work, work. You sleep when you're dead type mentality. And to say, oh, I'm going on vacation, I need a break. I'm not gonna lie, like, older people in my family are like, that's for white people. We don't do that. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's a luxury. So it's been nice to be able to model that for my elders, to say, no, it's not. Black people deserve solid mental health too. Black people deserve a break too. And then also to the younger people in my family, to my cousins and my younger siblings, to be able to model that and say, yes, you can be successful, but also in your success, you have to manage yourself and be able to maintain your health. And that includes your mental health, so.
I can go next. So cultural self-care. I would say, I have a lot to say. So I was taking notes because I don't want to forget these important things. But I think that prior to COVID, in the Indigenous communities, we have our ceremonies. We're not fully able to participate in ceremonies like we were able to pre-COVID. So that has been a little bit of a struggle, and it's a big gaping hole in Indigenous communities where they've tried to continue doing ceremonies. And we're relationship-based communities, so those social interactions with one another in face-to-face is so important. So we're really struggling right now. We're really struggling with being away from our families because we have a different view on families in our tribal community. And so we're always with family. You're raised with your cousins who are like your brothers and sisters. And now we're all social distancing. So that self-care that we would get being around family is really difficult right now. In the loss of ceremonies, obviously. Right now, what I'm doing to get through some of these things is I am listening to our traditional music, our social dance songs. It's so uplifting. It just does something to me. So when I'm really struggling, I go for a drive and I jam out. Luckily, I have our social dance songs on CD in my car. I put it in and I just jam out. And that's my kind of safe place to go to do that. And I try to, when I'm around, I'm a caretaker a lot for, I have my nephew who's living in our home with us, he's 2, and I have nieces and nephews that'll come spend time with me. And I try to, like, we talk about cultural things. I do storytelling with them. Like, you know, wintertime is so important in our community right now because this is the time that we tell stories that all have like teachings and life lessons in them. So we do a lot of that. But we also, in Oneida cultural values, we always want to practice a good mind. And I know when we're stressed and we're grieving and, you know, we're mentally not at our best, having a good mind is very difficult. And so one of the things that I like to try to do is meditation. I know a lot of people are big into meditation, but I struggle with trying to um, kind of just calm my mind down. My mind is always going, it's always going. And so it's hard for me to go into a situation with a good mind and have a good heart if I can't get that under control. So meditation is also important. Um, we just had Thanksgiving, and Indigenous people don't view Thanksgiving the way that Western culture does. To many of us, it's a day of mourning for our ancestors. And, but I also teach our youth that our traditional teachings about gratitude have always been there. They just might have been forgotten about. And so our ancestors were practicing those things way, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the first thought in the morning as you get up, you're giving thanks to those things. You're giving thanks. It's the first thing you do. You know, when you come into from that sleep and you start to wake, before you even move, you're giving thanks. You are thankful for a new day. You're thankful that you woke up this morning. You're thankful that you have your physical capabilities. You're thankful for the shelter that you have. You're thankful for friends and family. You're thankful for those things in the environment that we need in order to sustain ourselves, such as food, such as wind, such as weather, you know, all of these things. And then the Oneida have a Ganahela Dunksla, which during ceremony time, it's a Thanksgiving type of a ceremony. And we acknowledge all of those things in our cultural teachings of what we give thanks for as a part of our values in our community. And so I taught that lesson to our youth last month about giving thanks to everything that we're supposed to give thanks to. And then also, Indigenous people have such a close connection with Mother Earth because we view her as a female spirit. And so it's a struggle right now with the way that she's been mistreated. And so one of the things that I like to do when I'm struggling is I like to go outside and ground myself in her. A lot of people do that. They'll go hiking, they'll get dirty in the garden, they'll plant, any way that they can be connected to that earth, whether it be swimming or just being outside all day, or maybe going to pick flowers or going berry picking. A lot of people do that in our community, gathering other foods, maybe going hunting. All of those things ground us, but those are our original Indigenous teachings that have carried forward. And so people like to say, well, there's this, you know, grounding is like a newer thing. And it's like, no, Indigenous people have been grounding in Mother Earth for a long time. And the other thing is we have an Indigenous value of respecting the earth. We honor the earth, we acknowledge the earth. It's a part of our values and our traditions and our culture. So that relationship is we're here to protect her, to respect her, and to honor her. And the teaching is that if we don't do that to those things that help us in nature, as you would say, or in the physical world, that those things will go away and leave us at some point. So that always grounds me. Those teachings always ground me. And I know that when I'm feeling off balance and I'm not practicing self-care, where can I go swimming? Where can I get time to go in my garden? Can I plant flowers? You know, can I walk barefooted? Because honestly, I don't like to wear shoes in the summertime. I like my feet to touch Mother Earth. So thank you.
I'm glad you're here, Danielle, because you really did a really good job talking about the Oneida culture and self-care, a lot better than I would have been able to. But I think I wasn't really exposed to cultural ways of self-care until I started at Wise Women, although I am an enrolled tribal member. I was never immersed in the culture too much until I started at Wise Women. And I remember the first day that I was able to use traditional medicines, sage specifically, was during a healing program called White Bison Mending Broken Hearts that we hold at Wise Women, and it's focused on like healing intergenerational trauma. And the first day that I was able to use sage, we used it during like the opening and closing circle. But I just like slept, I think, for like 5 hours. It was the best nap of my life. And I have used sage from then on. And one other thing I wanted to touch on was the use of like sweat lodges. And those are just huge in our community as well as a way of cleansing and self-care. And again, has very beneficial for me. But I was reflecting, like, I don't think my parents ever explicitly like taught me like this is self-care, this is why it's important, this is how we practice self-care. And I don't think I learned explicitly about self-care until I started at Wise Women and until I entered my master's program. And I'm just like, wow, it's horrible. I feel like that should be self-care 101, should be a class in like high school or middle school. And that's why at least Danielle and I really focus on teaching self-care to our youth. But growing up, my mom and dad really taught boundaries. And I think that's a huge, huge thing when it comes to self-care. My mom did a good job of telling me like, no, I don't want to do that today, but also respecting my boundaries when I told her that I didn't want to do anything, like when I didn't want to do something she was suggesting. So I think boundaries was not taught, but really shown to me growing up. So that's me. Thank you. You're muted, Andrea.
Of course, I'm muted. So we're coming up on the end of our time pretty quick here, but just one last question for everybody. 2020 has really changed a lot about the way that we function as people, and has really impacted a lot of the things that we would usually do for self-care. I mean, my sort of go-to was like actual coffee at a coffee shop in the afternoon and spending some time there. And everything's closed. You can't do that. And Danielle, you were talking about ceremonies and how participating in those are such an important part of culture and grounding and making sure that you're really putting your best foot forward. And it's really a struggle to be able to do that in 2020 with all of our kinds of COVID restrictions and trying to keep people safe and healthy. So are there any tools that you have found in 2020 out of sheer necessity of your regular stuff not being there? Any tools that you found in 2020 that you want to share with our viewers out there?
So there's an app that I was introduced to in the beginning stages of quarantine. I will say Texas is a little different, as you all know. So some of the restrictions that you all have, unfortunately, you're not in place here. So the world definitely looks a little different here in Texas right now. But at the beginning of quarantine, when people were home and it was a stay-at-home order, there's an app called House Party. And it's an app that allows you to engage with multiple friends at the same time, but it also has like different games on there. So like you can play like charades or like Pictionary or just different things like that. And that was really fun for me, especially because I'm a people person. I like to, I enjoy my own space, but I also like to be around people that I love and feel their energy. And so that was the closest thing possible to being able to feel their energy and to be able to laugh and just enjoy each other's company and still maintain that distance to keep us all safe. So it was a little goofy when my friend said, no, download it. And I was like, I'm not doing this social media. I'm not doing it. And they were like, it's not social media, just try it. And I'm glad I did. It's fun.
I knew we were gonna do that. I am so consumed by social media that because it's in the job, you know, it's now the way that we connect with youth to do our programming and to help our clients. And so I'm going back to old school stuff. Like I'm busting out my craft stuff. Like I grew up big into, my family does puzzles. So I'm busting out the puzzles again. I'm gonna age myself here, but I definitely grew up in the 90s. So I'm busting out some of those old 90s games as far as like Nintendo and like Mario Brothers, like going back to like nostalgic things that like gave me comfort growing up in childhood is really what's getting me through a lot of stuff right now. And it gives me an option to unplug from social media, which I need. Otherwise, you know, things will consume me if there's a trending thing going on or an injustice going on in the world. And I have known myself that with the activism work that I do, to have it be all consuming is really not good for me. So reading, taking naps, like I feel like, you know, I grew up in a family or a household of domestic violence. So there was definitely this unhealthy value of, if you're not doing something, you're lazy and you need to find something to do, like, or I will find you something to do. That's how I grew up. And so giving myself permission to take naps has been wonderful. Otherwise, it's like, oh, you don't have enough to do, you're taking another nap. Like that's just that negative self-talk, right? So giving myself permission to do those types of things, to take a nap or just to binge Netflix, like finding those really heartfelt connections on Netflix, like those really great series or movies. I don't have a lot of time for that stuff, and I'm trying to make more time because right now that's the thing that's getting me through this, those little things and those nostalgic things. Thanks.
My Netflix history is embarrassing at this point. The amount of like cheesy teen shows that I've watched, like an episode a day, is like it's I will not tell you what I've been watching. It's embarrassing.
I think for me, I've seen like a lot of, I'd say, personal growth within 2020. And a lot of it has stemmed from like listening to my intuition and what I need, and setting boundaries with the people that I love to get those needs met. And thankfully, my team at work, we all are really there for each other. So it's been hard setting boundaries and like I can't do that group this day. But I've realized that when I say that's okay, and that Danielle and everyone else on my team is going to respect my boundaries. And I'm like, well, I should have had boundaries before COVID, but if anything, I got boundaries during COVID. Well, I'm starting to work on my boundaries during COVID. So it's hard, but I recommend it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so very much for being with us today. Brianne, Danielle, Amber, thank you for joining us and sharing your perspectives and your thoughts and your tips and tricks for everyone out there in the universe watching us. And for all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Stand Against Racism. And thank you for joining us here in our mission at YWCA Greater Green Bay. We're on a mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We're so glad that you could join us today, and we hope you can continue joining us into the new year and all of that jazz as well. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.